Hello, friends. My name is Nilay Bhatnagar. I'm a former engagement manager from the McKinsey, New Jersey office. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode in a series of episodes that I envision that would be focused on consulting interview prep. I envision about 25 to 30 different episodes that will cover all aspects of consulting case interviews. This would include structuring, this would include data interpretation, storytelling elements for crafting your behavioral stories, quant, brainstorming, etc. Right? Now, a few things before we actually dive into the topic for today, which will be focused on profitability cases. Right? First of all, why should you actually pay attention to what I'm saying? How is this channel going to be different from everything that exists currently? Well, the one thing that I have noticed is candidates today get severely overwhelmed when they're preparing for consulting interviews. They don't know what materials to consume, they don't know which opinions to follow, and there's so many different opinions out there right now. Right? So this is an effort from me to filter out all the noise that exists there and create a series of episodes with one objective and one goal to help you land that coveted consulting offer, right? So this will be a one-stop shop. You won't have to go anywhere. I'll cover a lot of things in the videos, and plus I'll leave links to some like PDF documents and some other relevant videos, right? So you won't really have to go anywhere else. Number two is the approach or the way we'll attack the interview prep is going to be very, very different from everything that exists out there, right? This approach will be based on common sense. This approach will be based on first principles problem solving, right? So we'll not focus on memorizing anything. We'll build out your foundational problem solving skills. That's the key. If you understand how to solve problems, you will never ever falter at case interviews, because in the end, it's all about problem solving, structuring complex issues, analyzing supporting data to come up with key insights, and crunching some numbers to kind of validate your solutions or pinpoint the problems that you're facing. Right? So, and finally, I've developed this approach based on my own experience at McKinsey when I was serving real world clients. Plus, I used to be an interviewer at McKinsey, so I've conducted more than 100 interviews across various geographies. And after leaving McKinsey, I've also completed 1,000 or more than 1,000 sessions with different candidates from all over the world, right? I've covered holistically all geographies. So based on this rich experience, I've crafted or developed this approach that will help you filter out the noise, focus on your goal of becoming a better problem solver, and ultimately getting that offer. All right. A few other housekeeping things, and then I promise I'll stop with this and we'll dive right into the profitability case approach, which I'm sure you guys are here for. Right. So I definitely appreciate and welcome constructive feedback. Right. It helps me refine my craft further. So all constructive feedback is welcome. Right. Also, all good questions will be answered by me. It might take me some time to get to all the questions. So please be patient, but I'll try to answer all good questions. Now, trolling is something I won't tolerate because we are very focused on getting that offer, becoming better problem solvers. So if you want to just troll, I'm just going to delete your comment. I'm just not going to engage with you. I'm just going to block you. Right? All right. So with that said, let's dive into our topic for today, which will be addressing or covering the approach one can use for tackling profitability cases. Now, why are we starting with profitability cases, right? Profitability cases are actually one of the most common case types that you'll encounter in consulting interviews. And there's a reason behind this, right? Profitability is one of the most important matrix for any for-profit organization. It's one of their core mandates, shareholder value maximization, which is a fancy term for saying each organization has this obligation to maximize profits so that they can redistribute that wealth to their shareholders in the form of dividends, in the form of rise in equity prices, etc. So that's why you'll encounter a lot of profitability cases. Now, a couple of common errors that I've seen candidates make over and over again when approaching profitability cases is they directly dive into profitability is equal to revenues minus costs. Revenues is price times volume. Cost is fixed cost and variable costs, right? I'm sure this approach is very common and a lot of you might be using this. I'll strongly recommend that you start unlearning this approach, right? It's an oversimplification of your client business. It reflects poorly on your business acumen. So I would strongly encourage you that you start moving away from this approach. And we'll talk about a more logical way of approaching these things, right? And the second mistake that I see candidates make is they don't clarify what does the client mean by profitability. This is a good clarifying question to ask. Are we talking about gross profits? Are we talking about contribution margin? Are we talking about operating profits? Are we talking about EBITDA, right? Are we talking about net income? Are we talking about cash flow? So what is the measure of profitability, right? Now, all of these terms, if you're not familiar, don't worry about it. As I said, right, as we build out this series, all of these things will be addressed. Right, so that's a good clarifying question to ask. All right. So now, having said all of this, I'm done with my spiel, and let's dive right into how do we approach profitability cases. Okay. So now there are two variants of profitability cases that you might encounter. In the first variant, which is a more expansive version of this, is the client they know there's a profitability issue and they want your consulting firm's help in figuring out exactly where this problem is coming from, what are the root causes, and what can they do about it. So they want you to holistically look at their problem, uncover root causes, and propose solutions. In the other variant, they're mostly interested in figuring out ways they can improve profitability. They don't care so much about the root causes. Okay, so here your focus would be more about ideating and brainstorming. We'll cover the first approach in this episode because that covers the second approach as well, which is just a subset of the first approach, right? Now, one other thing, right? When we cover this first approach, not only will you learn how to address profitability cases, but you will also learn how to address revenue declining or revenue growth issue cases and cost increasing cases, because those are two branches of the profitability case. Right? All right. So, moving on. So, our approach for addressing profitability cases will need you to answer three key questions, right? Where is the problem coming from? Is it a revenue problem? Is it a cost problem? A mix of both? Furthermore, if it's a revenue problem, which part of the business is underperforming? Maybe it's a product line, maybe it's a certain geography where we're not doing so well. And similarly on the cost side, right? Which cost is increasing? The second question is, now we know where the problem is coming from, but why is there a problem? So what are the root causes that explain the revenue issues that we are facing, or that explain the cost issues that we are seeing on the client side, right? What are the root causes? Remember, this is the meat of the case. Uncovering these root causes generally tend to be the key issue that you will discuss with your interviewer. And finally, once we have uncovered the root causes, you move on to recommending certain solutions on how to fix the problem. Now, as Einstein said, right, if you're trying to solve any problem, spend more time on where the problem is coming from and why is there a problem, right? Spend majority of time in better understanding the problem. The solutions will become obvious if you have a good understanding of the root causes behind the problem. Okay. All right, now let's take a deeper look into each of these three questions. So the first one is, where is the problem coming from? Right. So as I already told you, the objective over here is to figure out whether it's a revenue problem or a cost problem or a mix of both. So what you'll say in the case interview when you're communicating your structure is, I would like to segment my revenues and analyze the trends for the last 3 to 5 years. This segmentation can be performed based on our product lines, our geography, distribution channels, or customer segments. And similarly, I would want to segment my costs and analyze trends and benchmark my costs for the last 3 to 5 years to figure out exactly which cost is the problem child. Quick call out over here, there are multiple ways you can break down your costs, right? Fixed and variable cost is probably the most common way, but then there are others, right? You can do it direct versus indirect cost. You can do it the income statement way, where you break it down into cost of goods sold, the cost of sales, operating expenses, interest and taxes. And you can also do it the value chain view, right? Where you're just looking at the company value chain from R&D all the way to overhead functions. There's no one right or wrong way. So you can pick either, you can pick any of these four approaches. Right? There are merits for each. If you want a more detailed understanding of these four approaches and how to use them, there's a link in the description with a PDF on this entire topic on profitability. And there I give a lot more detail about how you can break down or more details about these four different approaches. Right? But just to summarize, the first step is all about just segmentation, trend, benchmarking to figure out whether it's a revenue problem, cost problem, a mix of both, and exactly where that issue is coming from. Moving on to our next bucket, which is, why is there a problem? Now, this is the key, as I already told you. So why do we have a revenue issue? Why do we have a cost issue? Right. So starting on the revenue side, you can break this down into external root causes and internal root causes. On the external side, you would want to analyze your overall market characteristics. Maybe it's the markets are actually slowing down, and that's causing the slowdown that your client is experiencing. Or maybe it's the competitors, right? They've changed something. Maybe they've launched a new product. Maybe they've changed their pricing. They're offering more discounts, and that might explain what we're seeing on the revenue side. Or maybe there's some misalignment with our key customers. They want something, but we're not actually giving them what they really want. So they are not that willing, or their willingness to pay for our goods and services has decreased. And that's reflecting in the revenue decline that we are seeing. Now, on the internal side, we might have issues with the pricing. We might have issues with the product market fit. So maybe the quality, the durability of the product is not there. Maybe our sales and marketing is just not effective. We can't create a buzz and awareness about a product that engage customers with our products, right? Even if our products are great, if you don't have good sales and marketing, then there might be a problem. And are we using the right distribution channels, right? Are we going where the customers are, right? So those are the root causes on the revenue side. Moving on to the cost side, here you can think about root causes in three different buckets. The first root cause would be, has there been an increase in the price of things that you procure externally? So anything that you're purchasing from your suppliers, there might have been an increase in the prices of those things. This could include raw materials, utilities, hourly labor, etc. The second root cause is related to inefficient utilization of resources, right? So maybe there is a process change that we have made that's resulting in more waste for us now. Maybe we have issues with labor productivity. Maybe there was a new process or step introduced, and the people who are working on that task are not skilled enough to be able to perform it appropriately. That's resulting in delays, or that resulting in errors, right? And the final reason could be there's an underutilization of your capital assets, right? At times you might have overestimated the demand, and maybe you're a manufacturing company, you've added excess capacity, but the demand is just not there. So now all those fixed costs are just sitting idle, right? So there's underutilization of your capacity, capital assets. Okay, so those are the root causes that might explain your revenue issues and your cost issues. Okay, and finally, we move on to the final part of the approach, which is going to fix the client's issue, right? Now, remember, in a real case interview, at this stage, when you're just communicating your structure, you won't have sufficient information about the source of the problem or the root causes, right? So therefore, you won't be able to recommend what the client should be doing. So the purpose of this bucket is just to showcase what kind of ideas you will be thinking about, right? To just mention a couple of things and move on, right? Don't spend too much time on this bucket because you really don't know what the client problem is. So some of the ways you can increase revenues will be focused on either growing the core business. Now, the core business is the core set of expertise that your client has, the core set of products and services, the geographies that account for 50% or more of the revenues and profits. Right? So they always start here because that's what they're known for. So you can grow the core business through various initiatives like price optimization, product enhancements, sales and marketing effectiveness, right? Revamping your distribution strategy, etc. And of course, to continue your growth, organizations are always looking for opportunities beyond the core market, right? So this involves initiatives such as launching new products or entering new geographies or positioning yourself to new customer segments, etc. Right? And on the ways to reduce costs, this will be tied back to the root causes. So if there's an increase in input prices, you can go back to your suppliers, renegotiate with them, ask for more discounts, maybe even change suppliers, etc. Right? If it was an inefficiency with a process or labor productivity, you would look into process redesign, Six Sigma, etc. You would look into improving labor productivity through training and upskilling. You will think about automation or reducing reliance on manual labor. And finally, if there was an issue with your asset utilization, you can think about alternate uses of that asset. Maybe you can lease it out for alternate purposes. Maybe you can generate or do something about the demand, or if nothing works, you can actually think about selling off that asset as well, right? So that wraps up our three-pronged approach for addressing profitability issues. So just to summarize, the three things that we'll look at: where's the problem coming from? Remember, this is where we're pinpointing, and all you're doing is segmenting your revenues and cost. But the key is to make it super contextual for your client. Then we move on to uncovering the root causes behind revenue issues and cost issues. So on the revenue side, you will do external analysis covering market, competition, and customers. Internal side, you will evaluate pricing strategy, product strategy, sales and marketing strategy, and distribution strategy. On the cost side, the root causes can be thought about in three different areas: increase in procurement prices, increase in inefficiencies, or underutilization of capital assets. Right? And finally, how do we fix these problems? You'll again break this down into ways you can fix your revenue issues and ways you can fix your cost issues. On the revenue side, you can think about growing your core business or expanding beyond the core. And on the cost side, you can think about renegotiating with your suppliers, redesigning your processes, shutting down excess capacity, etc. Right? So that wraps up our approach for addressing profitability issues. As I already mentioned, if you're facing a revenue declining case, all you have to do is just not talk about the cost side, and then you have your approach for revenue declining issues. And similarly, if you're facing a case on increasing cost, all you have to do is not talk about the revenue portion of this approach, and then you have a tailored approach for reducing client costs. Right? Again, I would remind you to make everything that you're talking about in this framework super contextual for the client. Right? So when you're talking about a market, make it contextual for the client. So for example, if it's a beverage manufacturer, when you're talking about market, you're saying the market for beverages, alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic beverages, right? So on and so forth, right? So the key is to make it super contextual. So what are the next steps for us from here? For you is to now take this approach and customize it according to how your brain works, right? So create your own recipe. Don't rely on what I've given you. Create your own recipe, apply it to multiple profitability cases, and refine and finalize. All right. From my end, what I'm going to do as a follow-up to this video is I'm going to show you how this looks in practice. So we're going to apply this approach to a couple of real case examples. And I'll also show you how this framework actually looks on your A4 sheet, right? What you should be writing and what you should not be writing. Okay, because candidates generally seem to be a little confused on how can I write so much in such a short amount of time, right? So no, you're not expected to write all of this on your A4 sheet. And I'll show you how you create short forms, what are the things that you're writing, right? And what are things you're just vocalizing when you're communicating the framework. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any comments, as I said, please leave them in the comment section. I'm going to leave a link to a PDF that talks about all of this in a lot more detail. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and buy that PDF. And I'll see you in the next episode in this series. Till then, take care and goodbye.